because we know each other. However, action is requested to confirm that the chair's decision to approve or disapprove the members' request to participate from a remote location was in conformance with the PlanRVA Commission policy for remote participation of members, and the voice of the remotely participating member can be heard and by all persons at the primary or central meeting location voice vote. And so at this point, confirmation of participation from a remote location for our chair, Sean Davis, requested to participate remotely for the following reasons. Specifically personnel matter, specifically scheduling conflict that prevents his attendance in person. It's been moved.
Second.
Yeah, and properly second. That remote participation has been approved, and thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for joining us today and making the difference in bridging the gap. Thank you. We welcome you here. Anything else? We do have a quorum, and so therefore we'll proceed to the administrative items, which is approval of minutes number 2 on page 3. As everyone has a chance to review the minutes on page 3. Move for approval. You have
and 4.
And 4, 3 and 4. Thank you much.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. And additional discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, sign of aye.
Aye. Yeah.
One comment.
One comment.
Yes, ma'am.
We approved the April 25th minutes, but but we were approving the January 24th. Because in April, there was no approval for the January, and we need to do both.
Oh, we missed
need to do both. Do we need to do both?
We didn't, yes, Mrs. Evans, correct. We didn't include the January minutes, so it's an error, so we could, would you like us to hold them for the next meeting? I'm sorry, I missed that.
That worked for me. Okay, thank you. So they'll be deferred until next meeting.
Apologies.
Okay, and Mr. Van, would you like to second that motion?
What?
To approve the minutes from?
Oh, yeah, I
last
did.
meeting?
I did.
You have,
Well,
is it moving?
I assumed it was the April 25th.
Okay,
But I was just asking, we did not approve the January 24th
Okay.
minutes
thanks.
because there wasn't a quorum at the last meeting, the April meeting.
That's correct.
That's right.
That's correct.
So now we're gonna just put it off. Yeah.
We'll include them in
Correct.
the August
Okay.
meeting packet.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Correct. So noted. Thank
Okay.
you. And all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Approved. Thank you so very much for that comment and that suggestion. We appreciate that. Now, if we approve of minutes, let's move to item 3, our financial reports, P&L, profit and loss, page 5, as well as the balance sheet on page 15. Mr. Dan, give us an overview of where we are here, page, again, pages 5 and 15. Let's see what we're starting at.
Okay,
Starts
starting with the profit and loss by month, it starts on page 5.
on page 5, correct, okay.
We'll give you the bottom line up front for the year ended June 30, 2023. We actually have an operating income of $33,953 and an overall net loss of $222,728. The difference between those two are our capital projects and capital outlay, which was due to the project to move into the space, which was authorized to be funded through use of fund balance. But going back to the net operating income of $34,000.
Okay,
You can see this in the middle of page 9. Apologize for dropping to the bottom first, but I
on
think that's
page 9, okay.
important.
Okay, you're looking at page 9 versus, I'm looking at page 13, which shows
It's just a detail.
detail, okay. All right, so page 9, we're having so we have a profit of
A net operating income,
33, is it 33,953?
that's correct.
Specifically, you round to 34,000, okay, all right.
Okay.
And if you remember, the budget for the year was designed to be a break-even budget. So
Yeah,
we
noticed that.
experienced a surplus against that expectation. And so the important elements to look as you look from page 5 through page 9. several elements of the budget didn't rise to the level that we expected, primarily in revenue. On
Okay.
page 5, the federal revenue was 1.8 million instead of 2.1. State revenue was 329,000 versus 364,000. But then we had a couple of special elements of revenue in the local area with an increased involvement with the CBTA. So that exceeded expectations. And then we also had some special projects out of the private revenue area that exceeded expectations. The primary one was the housing grant. We were able to put more efforts into that program than we expected.
Okay, that was line item 4441. Is that what you're referring to now? Regional housing grant?
That's correct.
Okay, all right,
So if we turn the page to page 6,
okay,
your total revenue at the bottom of that page was 3.3 million versus 3.5 million,
okay,
which was a 94% shortfall.
okay,
And the important element to remember there is that our revenue is driven by our professional services. And we did have some unexpectedly long vacancies as we recruited new people to our staff from some vacancies that started on July 1 in mid-September. So we didn't have the professional capacity or the professional hours to pass on through some of our grants. But the way that we accommodated for that was to control our expenses and to change some of how we organize our expenses. If you move to page 7, we get into our expenses. The first two area, page 100 and 500, are salaries and wages
okay,
and fringe benefits. Where you see that, we didn't experience the expense level that we had expected to, and that was because of those vacancies. Where you see a very significant difference is in the 6,000 direct cost pool. You see that total is 233,000 versus 104. What we're able to do was identify more specifically expenses that actually did relate to our funding sources and those specific programs. We're able to pass them through. So we're able to get more of our direct expenses funded through our grant programs. So that was a significant movement that helped us restore some of the revenue and also protect some of our bottom line. And as you look through pages 8 and 9, you'll see our different indirect cost pools. You'll see that most of them are significantly under their budget, from our professional fees being, 8,000 under, but our general operations, rent, and printing, and some of those operating techniques, our technology operations, good $38,000 under our expectation. We were able to achieve certain savings in those areas, either by, submitting them as direct expenses of the programs under the funding agreements as we were able to do, or just by, cost savings, changing some of our spending habits, some of the C's in those areas. And so our overall total expenses and our total indirect cost pool, as you see on the top of page 9, was only 619,000 versus 832,000.
page 9. Get that, hold on.
What is that? Oh, yeah, okay, sorry.
Oh, so you're saying on page 9, repeat that again, your last comment.
The very
Total expenses,
total indirect cost pool.
total indirect cost pool,
So
okay,
that's the burden that's on the organization at large,
okay.
was actually $200,000 less
That's-
than what we had budgeted. And
Okay,
part of that was, being better at our cost allocations to grants, and also just, being slower to spend than we had planned to do so. And so total expenses was only 93%. And that's how we were able to generate a net operating income when we thought we were going to break even from a budget perspective.
okay,
From our operating perspective throughout the year, we were watching these open positions. and not generating all the revenue that we had thought, but we were able to, kind of the ways that we've implemented some of our accounting practices and financial review practices. We're able to keep a closer eye on these things from month to month and quarterly perspective, and actually manage ourselves in a way that we could actually maintain a profitability. And so from that perspective, I think that we had a good year. We're able to react to certain challenges and, maintain, the plan of what we wanted to do operationally, but also financially.
Okay.
When you talk
ahead,
about the
question.
moving costs, where was that coming from? I know you said it, I've got it in my head and I just can't think of it.
The plan was
Reserves.
from fund balance.
Fund balance.
From
that's it.
Exactly.
We'll talk about that when we get to the balance.
Okay,
Okay.
because I wanted to find out.
So is that related to the non-operating activities that we have on that?
That's correct.
That's precisely it.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there. I was waiting for you to get
Well,
there. I wanted to also,
okay.
well, as he was just stated, which was very good to comment on the utilization percent. I know total revenue is 94% of budget. And expenses, I'm looking at total expenses on page 9 is 93% of budget. Pretty comparable, there's 1% deviation there. But as you're gonna get to in a few moments, before we get there, however, any things of concern and the expenses, first of all, have you done all the accruals? All the accruals in?
Yes.
We have more accruals to do.
Yeah.
Where are we?
And speaking to that,
Okay.
what this represents is our monthly close.
Okay, so we have closed the books per
So
se.
we've closed the books for the month. There will be year end.
Of June 30th.
There will be year end entries
Okay,
as they're prepared for audit.
okay,
Some of that will involve some accrual of some expenses as invoices come in that weren't, in our possession. When I did this part of the close.
right. And
But most of those would most likely generate an offset of revenue.
okay,
So I think our $30,000 is very safe.
okay, you feel comfortable with that number,
Right.
30,000?
And then the other element is preparing the books for the full accrual basis, which is, those long-term assets and the long-term
Retirement liabilities, of course, yeah, which need to be addressed. And in terms of the indirect cost pool, that you're comfortable with the numbers that's presented. I know she stated it was less than, pretty comfortable budget, 122, professional fees, in indirect costs.
Yeah, I did a thorough look of any of our operating expenses.
Okay.
So there's not, we have 12 months of most of our expenses.
We're not looking at surprises in that area.
Correct.
Okay, and the
So we
indirect
went through
cost
that.
pool.
We also dealt with
Okay.
the prepaids and some
Okay.
of those elements as well.
All right, okay. All
And
right,
so-
okay. Any other questions? Do we look at the line items before we?
Mr.
get to
Chairman.
it? Yes, sir.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Chairman. I think it's appropriate to bring up at this time, since we were talking about personnel,
Mhm.
the strategic personnel policy that was initiated by the executive committee, approved by finance committee, and ultimately approved by the full commission, does play a part in revenue the latter part of this year. Ms. Schickle has a strategic hiring plan that's very thorough and is in the process of doing that now. So as everyone knows, our money comes from billing. And I don't know if you'd like her to speak to that, Mr. Chairman, but that's going to play a crucial part. As Dan mentioned earlier, and I appreciate it, Dan, some of the longer vacancies, which we had anticipated, and then CVTA, a couple of those things, all of it comes together to put us where we are now, which is still in a great place. But as we look to the horizon, I think we see we see a lot of daylight rising over the hill as it relates to hiring and subsequently revenue. And if you'd like, I guess Ms. Schickle could speak to that a little bit more in depth, but I do think.
Yes. Ms. Schickle, sure, please, if you would like to at this time.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay,
So we have 2 recruitment processes underway right now. Those were two positions that were vacated at the latter part of fiscal 2023. So we're in the process at the interview stage for both of those. First round for the community engagement manager next week. And I think we're in the second round, if I'm not mistaken, Diane, for the senior planner position. We have an additional 4 positions that were approved for this fiscal year budget, and we are expecting another vacancy to come as a result of the CBTA's recent action. So we're initiating those on schedule, and well, the CBTA vacancy, that's a different story, but the 4 approved positions by the commission, we're working to initiate and actually accelerate the recruitment processes for those, just because it has taken longer than expected to hire in the transportation domain. And so we're moving those up in the timeline, and I think we're planning to be fully staffed by the end of December. Is that
Yes.
right, Diane?
Yes.
And so with regard to the CBTA action, the CBTA took action their last meeting in July to identify Chad Parsons. as
Yes,
the-
thanks for mentioning that. I was about to ask that, so thanks for
the top
mentioning that.
candidate. And
The
so,
impact of that.
yes, and so we are waiting for that process to be completed, but once it is, we'll make our steps to fill what we presume and expect to be a vacancy in our director of transportation position.
Okay, so it will have some impact on us
Yes.
relative to the CBTA going forward.
Yes, it
This
will.
is my question.
It will.
Okay.
So we've been working over the last period of time in anticipation of and to be ready for when that is officially signed and sealed and delivered.
All right, good. Appreciate that. Any other comments, Mr. Chairman?
No, sir.
David.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
If there aren't any more questions on
Any
the
line items?
monthly or quarterly financials, page 10 begins another look at our profit and loss, but by line of business.
Okay,
And this is a format change that we implemented a year ago for fiscal 23, so that we can isolate kind of our different program levels.
by programs, as I remember, we did this. Yeah, very good. And you're gonna allude to that now.
So
Talk about.
if you see the very top, you see the
Okay.
columns are headed by administration, community
Yes,
development, et
correct.
cetera, transportation.
Mhm.
As you follow the columns down, transportation is still, a very significant element of our revenue. But I think you can start to see on the page, top of page 11, total revenue of our 5.4.
What's that again, please? Page 11?
Yeah.
Or mid page 11.
Okay,
Total
very
revenue,
good.
5.4 million.
All right. Okay,
2.4 of that is out of transportation. But you can start to see the importance of community development at 1.6. Emergency management, 400, and environment at 300,000. Administration, our administrative revenues is just under 500,000.
yeah,
So much of what we do here is funded through these programs, the related grants and other financial agreements that we have. And I think that this statement does a nice job of kind of focusing on where we are with each of those. And, the emphasis on transportation is appropriate given its size, but the thing that we really need to be watching is how we manage the other programs to make sure that we are attracting the revenues for those programs and manage them well. It's part of our grant management, but also drawing other types of funding sources to them, which was a significant part of our fiscal 24 budget. But you can start to see that a little bit more clearly, I think, when you see kind of what are the proportions of our budget.
Mhm.
Can you, maybe for my benefit, in the data research and analysis column on page 13, it shows a net operating loss of 128. So can you kind of talk through that, but then maybe the distinctions between what that number represents versus what it represents in emergency management and environment?
Yeah, the significance in page 13,
Yeah.
Right.
And negative 128,388.
about
On page
2/3 of the way down
13.
the page.
The
The,
net operating income is negative there.
The first column, administration, we actually show an income of 266,000. An important element of that is how our general expenses, our indirect cost pool, is allocated to our actual operating departments. and therefore to those grants. So that shows not revenue coming into administration, but actually a shift of expenses to the grants to be paid by them. And so that's an important element of how we can succeed financially, is how well do we actually manage those indirect costs and get them reimbursed through our contractual agreement.
Within grant.
Yeah, that's what you allude to. I think is critical and important because you see the same thing with regard to strategic partnerships and the environment as well. You see net operating losses in those two other, actually three other programs. We look at emergency management as well.
Yeah,
And
especially those,
88,000.
especially those three
Those
areas.
three areas, yeah,
We don't have dedicated funding sources
okay.
to pay for the full charge of the personnel that goes them and their related
Mhm.
support costs, direct expenses,
Yeah,
to get the full wage, the full fringe, and the full indirect allocation.
Mhm.
That's something that we get through the
Mhm.
transportation grants,
Okay.
Mhm.
more so.
Mhm.
Haven't you always been doing that? I mean, wasn't that sort of understood that in a grant, you put in the administrative cost?
When you have a grant that allows for it, in the data
Okay.
Mhm.
research and analysis group,
Mhm.
there aren't really funding sources that support that type of expense allocation to it. We have
Okay.
special project
Cost.
revenues.
Okay,
Mhm.
I mean, your question is why we're doing it this way, so that those types of things kind of pop out a little bit better.
Okay.
So part of the fiscal 24 budget shows,
Mhm.
some goals as far as contracting
Mhm.
partners to pay for a longer term
Mhm.
But don't
projects.
Okay.
Don't the-
Okay.
maybe I'm not reading it right, but for example, environment, the 84,924 in net operating loss,
Mhm.
doesn't that include the required match?
Yes, the match, the contribution from the general fund
Right,
to match
so
those grants.
it would stand to reason on a grant that's being reimbursed at 50%, because there's a 50% match, that there would be a loss as we're reporting it, because that's how we show the match. Am I right?
Well, the match requirements are actually shown at the top of page 11,
Okay,
where
that's what I was asking.
the revenue distribution comes into play.
Okay,
So that section, that 4,900 revenue
4,900.
distribution section,
okay.
that shows how much we are
Matches.
obligated
Yeah, it's all down.
to match other grants. So you see that very top line, environment gets 91,000.
Yeah.
That's because that agreement calls for a 50% local match.
Okay.
Transportation has 144,000
Mhm.
because that grant calls for a 10% match. So those are things that are required of us. So those are draws on our administrative funds. That's why you see all those negatives in that first
Yeah.
column under
Yeah.
administration.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. They draw out the administrative side from us. They
Right,
eat into it, if you will.
right,
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
which is what you're highlighting on page 13.
right. So that shows kind of where our
Okay.
Look at
state appropriation goes, our local membership dues.
Okay, exactly.
It's a very significant element, 236,000 of
Mhm.
our membership dues
Uh-huh.
are contractually obligated to help support those other programs.
Mhm.
And then, transportation would break even. Because we don't have anything going in there that doesn't fall under that funding agreement.
Mhm.
But while we have losses under data research and analysis, emergency management environments, because we have parts of those operations do not have a grant ready to fund them. Data research and analysis is the primary one right now. It's an investment area where a lot of that is paid for not by general funds according to a grant agreement, but the investment of the organization into that area.
Mhm.
And so same thing with emergency management environment, just
Mhm.
to a lesser extent.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the reason why we show it this way is we want to show that there is a subsidy by the general funds to those particular areas
Those areas,
at this
yeah.
point,
Yeah.
but they are identified as growth areas and important areas. And so as we attract different types of grants, get more grants in the environment area, which we already have on hand, as we enter into agreements with data partners. We do have a few of those that we've been able to, enjoy the last few years, and we're continuing to develop them. We can sell those services and actually, reap the rewards.
Do you think so? To sell them?
Definitely.
That's what I want to know. Where's the revenue gonna come from?
We already have.
Yeah, okay, because you, as you pointed out, you want to look at those programs where they are eating into our
But they don't,
actual resources.
but they don't stand alone, because
Okay.
one of Data's main clients is actually the transportation group.
Oh, okay.
So. The
So you should be
significant,
paying for it then. Okay.
Right.
We didn't make them pay for it, but they're getting.
so they are getting reimbursed. It's just that we have more capacity than just
Okay.
what transportation would
Okay.
need.
Right,
So the key for us in this view is to make sure that we're attracting revenue that actually pays for those
Okay.
programs and those, kind of that excess capacity.
mhm,
But that excess capacity is there and valuable, so that as we may need to perform services for the other groups, but we also can perform services for the community at large.
mhm,
And that's where a lot of our, housing grant came into play,
mhm.
is being able to connect with some partners in the community that way. So it's one of the main differences between, a year ago, fiscal 21 versus fiscal 22. Now fiscal 23 is showing that development. The fiscal 24 budget shows the further evolution of that process by calling for, finding those types of funding partners, not traditional grants, but actual, business relationships in place to sell that part of our service and to actually partner with others for those services.
Yeah, I see what you mean, and that's exactly right. You want to look at it, because one thing I mentioned to Martha is we want to make sure that we are earning more than it costs us. When we are supplying and servicing organizations, especially the CBTA. Well, make sure we have revenue there, not lost, or even break even. Should not be a break even item.
Yeah,
And
and we,
in those regards.
if you go to the bottom of page 13,
Okay, I'm there.
the transportation column, you see a net revenue of 29,000.
Yeah,
That's the product of our CBTA relationship and the service
right,
fee
exactly.
Okay.
Okay,
that we're able
yeah, it's
to
gotta be positive.
develop with them.
Yeah, that's especially gotta be positive, given the other movement in other areas that we're working through. That's good.
But you also see the positive in the administration column, 266.
Yeah.
But a lot of that
Mm,
is required to actually subsidize those other groups that are still growing and becoming
Okay.
independent
I see,
themselves.
I see. Okay, I see.
One of the first questions that
Okay.
people asked of me was, we really need to know what our contractual obligations are. And
Okay,
how do we actually spend all of our membership dues?
okay,
A very significant answer to that is, what are our revenue share requirements?
okay,
Yeah. Okay.
And
okay.
that's where you go to that, that earlier section that we discussed, that 4,900 section of what is our required distributions. And so if you think about it, out of that, $500 and some $1,000, 236 is automatically spoken for. It's not available for special projects. It's not available for other investments and services.
Mhm.
So this is one of those ways that we're able to keep track of that underlying, financial structure that we have. It does require, the local organizations to participate in these programs. But what it is, especially on that transportation side, we invest 10% to get 90%. And that's a significant element of revenue coming into the
That's
state.
good, that's very good. That's good.
And that contract is not just
Mhm.
expenses directly attributable to that contract.
Mhm.
It includes the allocation of all fringe benefits, the allocation of the entire indirect cost, so rent. That's how we get the space paid for.
Mhm.
So that's where these kind of cross sections come into play. Why we have the different cost pools between an indirect cost pool, a direct cost pool. But also our lines of business. So this is something that we started a year ago.
Yeah, I remember.
We're getting,
Which is good. I'm really glad we did, because we need to understand better the breakdown versus just a final number. And that distributions and allocations and the cost sharing that we are experiencing, which I think is very evident on page 13.
and our fiscal 24 budget capitalizes on that concept.
Yeah.
And it's actually, going back to Chair Davis's comment about the investment personnel,
Yeah.
being better at this allows us to invest in our people, which then allows us to invest back in this. It's that circular strategic element of developing our staff, developing our capacity and resources, and to have, a little bit of capacity in some of these areas that we can then, leverage into the community in different types of funding arrangements. To say it in business terms, actually sell those services.
Yeah, and it's very important that our financials align with the strategic plan that the executive committee has arranged or is arranging as it relates to the services in the different categories. As you mentioned, namely the given partnerships, strategic partnerships that we have here, where I see you have it outlined. So that's important,
right?
That we align there. Any comments or questions as we go forward on this? Please.
I've been on with you and with Pat since day one for this finance committee. I'm finally starting to be able to understand these statements. They were so messed up when we first.
They were challenging, yeah.
And you came into that stuff.
Dan's done a really great job, I think.
Yeah.
It has made a difference. You're absolutely right. It was frightening. It was frightening to look at and understand, especially, losses, and now we were losing money.
I don't have to work as hard to understand it now as I used to. I don't mind that.
Yeah, we all on the same page there. You all, I was frightening. It was frightening. Yeah, it's right. But yeah, go ahead. That's great.
Making sure that this information, both the reporting, but also just the structure of our revenue and contracts actually support the strategic vision is very important. And that's then the emphasis.
Okay, that's what I was alluding to for the chair. And I think it's important the commission understands that too, as mentioned, support the vision of the executive committee and the commission, and the executive committee accordingly. And very good.
Moving to page 15, the banner.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? We'll move on. Any other questions on any other line items? Everybody okay with that? Given where we are, all right. Discuss utilization, which is one question I want you to cover, so you got that.
The
4.93%.
The very top line, the cash and cash equivalent.
Okay, let's talk about page 15 then.
You see that there's a significant decrease in our cash balance.
What accounts for that?
Essentially the net income or the net loss of 222,000.
Yeah, let's go back to that net loss. That's what you would.
Which was funded.
Okay.
Which was paying for the significant capital project of moving into the space.
Moving in here, because we really contributed negative to the fund balance in that regard. You're right.
Well,
but that was
a
plan,
which was part of what we anticipated. But
so you're saying
we know that.
You're seeing the funding of that plan use of fund balance is the reduction in cash. You see $323,000 reduction in cash, where you see the fund balance went down by $222,000.
Okay, right, which is anticipated.
So both of those were planned. So the question is, what's the other $100,000 reduction? And that's where you look at the reduction in receivables, which is actually an influx of cash. If you think about it, you get paid for receivables, you get cash. But then you look at those liabilities, you see a $500,000 reduction in liabilities. So we had a significant reduction or payout of those short-term obligations. Primarily, a piece of cash, $102,000 that we received in error from one of our funders that was just sitting there at June 30th of last year that we had to get back.
That 102,000?
That 102,000.
Okay.
Due to a grant award.
Okay, a grant award that contributed, has been sent back.
It has been sent back.
What the report shows, okay.
And a pay down of accounts payable. So instead of $1 million of short-term liabilities we
Okay,
have $500,000 of short-term liabilities.
Okay.
So that's where that extra piece of cash went. So overall, our financial position, our balance sheet position is still very strong.
Mhm.
It just, looks strange as you look at, the year over year. But one was, the planned payout. We didn't take on debt
mhm,
to pay for this move. We paid it, we had the resources in hand. We had cash in our fund balance that enabled us to do a very significant project, which was move into the space.
One of the questions I have for the fund balance is,
okay,
we calculated that, the fund balance is really there for in case we have to shut down.
right.
And when we did it before, we had different expenses. So should we sit down and talk about what the fund balance should be now? I mean, that was what I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah.
Because we have different expenses, and if we have to leave here, it's gonna cost more, whatever. But that's the reason for the fund balance.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, because you articulated that right from the beginning. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Well, we
That's
had
why-
to, we
Right.
worked on it one
Exactly.
time, years and years ago, because we had a real problem.
Yeah, yeah,
So-
and I'm not sure what others think, but it's my understanding it's something we have to look at, I believe, going
Okay.
forward.
I think
we
that
have
was
to.
recent, looked at as what, 3 months?
Something like
Something like
that,
that.
yeah.
I think it's 6 months, wasn't it?
6
We
months.
presented a
Well-
few different scenarios
Mhm.
for what the philosophy would be.
Okay,
And I think that we're ready to come back to the committee when
okay,
you're ready to present, given our new circumstances, what we think those should be.
Well, and in
The
fact,
$1 million was not derived based on a cash for operating. It was derived from the years ago sort of thought process that I think
You
we're
went buy
ready to
out the
come back.
lease and all kinds
Yeah,
of things.
yeah,
Yeah.
or pay off it.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing is, it's there to do what we did.
mhm,
And so we, what is the amount we're staying for? That's the main thing.
okay,
I
in
think
fact,
we're ready to come back with
Okay.
some calculations for you.
I like what you just said.
Yeah,
It's there to be used.
Yeah.
One of the uses
Which
is
is-
just to close down the operation, but it's
Yeah.
also an investment tool.
well, there's a.
Yeah.
We invested in the space, we're investing in these programs. The space we couldn't necessarily pay for out of our operating budget.
Hmm.
The investments in our other programs, new programs, we are.
Well, Mr. Chair,
If
I'm
you
gonna,
remember.
I'm gonna move that we ask
Excuse me.
staff to bring back to us
Thank you.
recommendations for about the fund balance going forward.
I appreciate it.
One of the things,
That's a
thinking in
motion.
terms of.
Can I get a second? Then we'll have discussion. Then
Okay.
move and probably second.
Yes.
Now discussion, comments, yes, ma'am.
Well, what we just said
Yes.
is part of it too, but
Uh-huh,
as you know, at the airport, we have 3 budgets. We have one where if it's a great year, if it's
Yeah.
a there's a problem.
mhm.
And then the other one is what they used to refer to as the 911 scenario, 9/11, excuse me.
Yes, another
Scenario.
9/11 experience, yes.
And that was the way we approached this because we suddenly had an emergency and we didn't have any cash on hand. I mean, that was,
Oh, my.
the fund balance was set up for that.
Mhm.
But it really does help in case, for instance, there's an emergency. I don't know any other way to put it. And I don't know, how did COVID impact the organization? I know you did it remotely. Did you have to buy a lot of
Was
computers?
it cost? Was it
Yeah.
cost impact?
What are the impacts of something that's more of an emergency and not, like a one-time thing, or,
Mhm,
I mean, not just that you're switching money around,
mhm.
but it's for an emergency. That's the whole
Right,
point, or what's voted on by the organization. But that's why they have the 3 budgets at the airport, because, and then of course, when COVID came, we got down to like practically zero. There was no income hardly there certainly wasn't any income from parking. And here, what if some, catastrophe happens and there are no requests for certain types of, there are no grants available.
Mhm.
Just thinking there's always an emergency or reason, but that was what it was for, to do it similar to not just the airport, but I just like to use that as an example. 'Cause
Right,
They have those 3 different,
Are you suggesting we have the alternative scenarios and what they bring back to us?
and what amount of money you think you would need to cover an emergency or, or,
okay,
I don't know, what if the building burned down? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I think
Any
we
type
can,
of thing
I think
like
we
that.
can think about this
Just,
in two ways. We've been working to develop a continuity of operations plan, so.
Okay.
I think about the risks that this agency has, and what those drivers of potential shortfall in revenue would be.
mhm,
And it's really, as you all know, around staffing.
okay.
So the COVID risk for us, which we averted, was if we had had staff members who had to go on medical leave, particularly during the time that the government, required that employers pay for that extended leave beyond what they had earned.
Yeah,
And so that would have been above and beyond cost outlay for us. We did not have that. But I think that's the type of situation that you're talking about, is what happens if we have so many vacancies at the same time that it puts, that drastic of a dent on our revenue potential.
mhm,
Or what happens if we had a situation where we had multiple staff members who needed to go on sick leave, but were still, still earning the salaries while not being able to produce and bill. So those would be the types of, I think, threats that we could evaluate and assess and incorporate into those types of scenarios. And then we can also look at, what happens in a particular line of business now that we have this format. What would happen in a particular line of business, and what's the sort of the risk associated with the loss of those types of revenue streams. So I think we can come back, probably not at the August meeting with all of that information, but I think at one of the meetings this fall.
Yeah,
In August, we can probably start to tee it up.
yeah, I think later this fall will be better, I'd rather not, and for August, I think later this fall will be preferable from my perspective. And I think the discussion is well noted, because we need to look at that certainly, and I couldn't agree more
The other
with
thing
that.
I'll point out is
Uh-huh.
this fiscal year, 2023, while we experienced an overall net loss and that contribution from fund balance to cover the expenses associated with the move and the build out. I think one of the things that's we should credit Dan with also is that in the current fiscal 2024 budget, we do not have those capital expenses budgeted as part of the transfer from fund balance. They're incorporated into our operating budget.
okay.
And so we, I think, have a better philosophy around how we budget to be able to protect that fund balance going forward, and not, as I saw in prior years, we were essentially budgeting to transfer dollars from the fund balance as opposed to figuring out how to live within our means.
Well, and that's exactly, yeah.
So really what we're planning for is that those unanticipated, unexpected circumstances, not the normal course of our operating business.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly,
Okay,
thank you.
that's
And if we can quantify that, that would be the challenge, quantifying that, what that means, which I think takes more time than just 30 days or 40 days or 50 days. So I agree. Any other comments? While the motion's on the floor, yes, Dane.
There's been some
Yeah.
analysis around that.
Good. Good.
Already, so we're not
Okay,
starting
good.
from scratch, but
Yeah.
I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
When you're looking at an operating budget, you're looking to operate, at least break even. I think that you need to look at your capital items so that you can thrive long-term, so that you don't have to take it out of fund balance or fund it with debt. So that was part of the transition in this 24
Right.
budget.
Yeah,
And then what you're bringing up is,
Yeah.
what are those risk scenarios?
Yeah.
okay.
That actually could dig into, those best laid plans.
Okay.
Mr.
Well,
Chairman.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
I probably need to modify my motion to put a date on it.
Thank you. I was about to ask that. I was waiting on that.
So,
Waiting on
tell me
that.
what date you want us to come back.
Well, let me ask, Martha, what would be reasonable? I don't want to put a demand on you that's unreasonable, and given vacations and people off in July and August and all, we want to be cognizant of that. So later this fall, there's something I've been planning to do, but I just didn't think
Yes.
the time hadn't come. But now that we have a motion, I think we,
So for discussion purposes, maybe
Okay.
Jen and I can both weigh in.
Okay.
I think about, the load, if you will, to make sure that we stay on schedule with the audit.
I
And so
think
I
that
want
would
that
be
to
my
be a
guess.
priority.
Yes.
However, I also think that this is a good opportunity and good season to talk about this in the context of the request that we'll submit at the end of November to both jurisdictions for fiscal 2025 too. So I think that inherently our evaluation of our fund balance policy it makes sense to think about that in the context of what the locality investments are for the nation.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking maybe we try to anchor this around, I know we have a 10:31 meeting that's dedicated to the audit. And so perhaps we could think about teeing it up in conversation in August, having more conversation in October, and then, you know, ideally putting, you know, recommendations forward to the commission toward the latter part of 2023.
Okay, so
The
that's
January
approximately November,
Finance committee meeting.
approximately November then, because we have the audit done by October. And the subsequent month, maybe after we have all that done, we know the numbers are pretty sound, then we can.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, I think the
Maybe,
next meeting after October
I find
31
this
is
is a conservative.
January,
approach to
January,
the
man.
I think so.
You think
I-
we
this
should
is a
wait till
conservative
then, or you think
approach
we
to the
should
whole
put it in
process.
part of our October meeting then maybe?
To be
What
sure.
do you think? Well, you know, I
I'm in
don't want
another
to
organization.
undue pressure, because I think this is critically important analysis.
And they only have.
But then too, we want to be moving in that direction by the end of the year.
And if they go, over, they
You
don't
need-
call.
you
it,
need this
can't be
information.
standard.
To
They
properly
don't.
deal with the county contributions, so we need to have it forth.
Okay. Yeah, the county contribution, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we need to have that as a part of that, so that our funders, the counties, our customers, our owners, if you will, can appreciate that. I think that's a good point.
I
Well
think
noted.
from a timing perspective to start the process in August.
In August, okay,
And then as we need to, in the October 31st meeting, we'll have a finished audit,
October
So we'll
31st,
have-
okay,
you know, confirmed numbers.
good,
So we can do some further analysis off of that, but we'll also be into the fiscal year where we can have some budget, some of the restructures that we have to do there.
okay.
So the recommendation would probably be a January meeting recommendation.
Is that too late for you to be able to consider for the budget?
I mean, I think that, again, I'm sorry, I was just sort of thinking this through and talking, but I think that we would almost need to be having the discussions now in order to change make any recommendations around change of due structure. And so it seems like doing this well would be better than doing it fast. And there may not need to be any recommendations for dues, but I think if we do that in January, then we're ready for 2026 when that comes around.
But kind of in our approach of quarterly strategic planning, we'll be looking at certain elements of it. It's the conversion into what should the fund balance be? So there's probably a near-term look at it.
Yes,
And then
I think
there's,
we can make a recommendation around the fund balance policy much sooner than, and then that can be a discussion about where we are with dues. We're still seeing significant growth in this region, that I would not think that, we would anticipate really any change in that will require a change in dues. I think
Okay.
if anything,
Okay,
the biggest challenge that we have is, to be candid, is the difference between the contributions our smallest jurisdictions make and the contributions our largest jurisdictions make. And probably,
yeah,
Sorry. I'm sorry, there was a delay. I'm sorry, Ms. Sheckle. Go ahead, please.
yeah,
I was just gonna say, I think probably the bigger question is how do we navigate that? Not so much whether the rate needs to be adjusted.
so it's large and small jurisdictions show is a concern from your perspective. Did I understand you correctly?
I just think
Okay,
it's something that we need to.
Evaluate, okay, monitor, evaluate, and discuss, okay. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yeah, we're, it's at a motion now, but we're discussing, a timing for information back to this committee and back to recommendation to the executive committee and the commission itself. Relative
sir.
to fund balance, which I think should also include discussions with maybe our, localities. Maybe, I don't know if they have had a chance to look at that. Certainly, we don't want to leave them out of that. But your comments, Mr. Chair. Chairman Davis.
So I'll certainly support the motion, Mr. Allen. I guess my question is this a review and recommendation? Is this a priority, part of a strategic initiative? I don't think there's ever a problem reviewing financials, particularly as it relates to fund balances and those types of things. But not questioning where it's coming from or where it's going. I'm just trying to get a full appreciation. Is this a review and recommendation process, or is this something that is a priority and a strategic initiative that we need to place on more on that list?
That's a good, that's a great question, Mr. Chair.
Well, I think it's a review and recommendation, but we
Okay.
already have established that we have to have a fund, the base fund, our fund balance.
Right.
It's just a matter, does it?
What's
need to be
appropriate
adjusted?
level?
Does it
Yeah,
need to
what
be
is the
adjusted?
amount? that
Yeah.
we should have?
The question we're looking at, Mr. Chairman, is the appropriate level and the rationale for that level.
Right.
I think is what we're primarily concerned about. We know it needs to be done. We just want to make sure it's done in connection with other emergencies and issues that may arise that we haven't contemplated. So that's the rationale there. And we're looking at it time. I would say late this fall. Now, here's another thing too. If you miss a date because you have a need to, there's nothing wrong with that. I love your comment, Martha, regarding do it well, not quick. Well, if we want to do it well, not quick, I like that approach.
Yeah, I think that's really important in a lot of things.
Yes, sir. I agree. And so my thought in that is that, we say later this fall, but we are flexible. We have flexibility knowing the quality of what we're looking at and the underlying assumptions. The biggest part will be the underlying assumptions that are included. Okay? Any other comments? Or you want to make?
Well, I think you were gonna make a
Sure.
modification to your
I
motion.
was gonna modify it to put a date on it, but
That's what
I
I
think
need.
we'll leave.
To late this fall?
How about
late
we
one.
commit to updating the committee at the August and October meetings, so it'll be part of the agenda and discussion, so we know it's moving forward,
Okay.
Okay,
but we don't have
That
to
was
decide to
certainly
say
Monday.
my
when.
motion is so amended.
Okay.
Okay, it's been
Second,
moved,
second,
so amended, and second, so amended as well. Now we had that discussion. Thank you for the discussion. I think it's critically important and a great project. And thank you for your comments there, Ms. Sickle. It's been moved and proper second. All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, so that's good. I think we have accomplished a great deal there. So I'm really happy with that. Thank you, because that's been a long-term goal of mine. So thank you all. Thank you. As well.
Yeah.
Now, Dan, you were on the balance sheet. We were talking about cash and the bank, and we're talking about other initiatives. And so where we are, any other comments on this balance sheet we need to be aware of?
Yeah, your treasurer's report is at the very bottom.
Very good.
Those are liquid assets.
Okay,
And
investments, okay,
with our interest rates associated with them.
okay, Okay.
As you may expect that July with the receipt of
mhm,
number dues for the year, the cash balance is, back to our height of operating levels. So,
okay, so we will get that cash in July?
yes,
Okay, so that will increase significantly our cash balance,
correct.
cash in the bank person. Very good, very good. That's good to know.
And as,
All right,
as,
good.
one other thing to add
Okay.
on, Michelle and I have been, discussing kind of an ongoing quarterly strategic
Mhm,
planning meeting, which, talks about a rolling forward budgeting process. and
Okay.
Project management process.
okay,
But the idea is also, I've been looking at this as well as, the balance sheet management, most public organizations don't even look at a balance sheet management element of it.
that's true. Thank you
And
for
so,
knowing that.
looking at what our fund balance needs are and opportunities,
Okay.
I think it's a natural roll forward into our, budgeting process,
Mhm,
which should be more than just a year process, but should be throughout the year as we, adjust to, the reality of the year, but also the plan
mhm,
as we go forward. So I think all of this is starting to dovetail again together.
okay,
And then the other strategic element to consider is our, information systems.
okay, yeah, absolutely.
Right now, we made a number of changes, but there's still some other investments that we can make to make sure that, we have the information systems available to us to help us make these decisions.
Absolutely,
And so
absolutely.
That's one other element to keep on our horizon, for this fiscal year, especially now, the one that we just started.
Okay, very good. And another thing from the treasurer's report, this is why I like the treasurer's report. It shows us where our cash is and at what point do we dip below what we perceive to be an appropriate operating cash balance. I think that's one thing I'm concerned about. You know, you can have receivables, accounts receivables bill, but where's the cash? You know, where's the cash? I want to know where the cash is because that's a critically important. We need to know. And I almost want to look at, when I do it at my county level, trust me, I want to look at almost a rolling trend of where do we dip below our operating fund balance and how long do we do that? Because you know you have your receipts when you have peak of collections from the county's perspective in June and November, December. But where's the cash on those intervening months? Do we dip below that operating cash balance? That would be important to know. And so the trending of that is important as well with cash. And what's the impress amount that we need in that bank to make sure that we don't bounce a check or a transfer or wire transfer. Right?
I do think that that's a missing piece in our current fund balance policy that Dan's raised.
That's what we gotta have.
We can incorporate that into the discussion over the next couple of months.
Thank you. Thank you. That's critically needed. Thank you.
The fund balance question is also about.
It's a part of
asset
that.
composition.
Yeah,
The entire balance sheet composition.
absolutely. I think that's important. Thank you. I appreciate you. That's great. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Other comments and questions on the balance sheet? Anything else you think we need to look at? I see bill receivables increase from $699 to $790, almost $94,000 net change there. I see there increased receivables. And so are these 30 days? Help me remember, are these 30 days? I'm thinking 30, net 30, net 50, net 60. What are we looking at there?
Most of them are within 30 days,
30 days.
but there are a couple of elements that are longer than that
Okay.
as we're catching up with a couple of our payers. In, so we are looking at that. That's part of
Okay.
the asset composition element that's
Okay.
readily available for cash
Yeah.
to pay these items. Another element of it is that
Okay.
those two balances change significantly with our one grant, the housing grant, where we have a significant relationship with subcontractors. And so their payable and related receivable balances, can fluctuate $100,000 per quarter.
Okay.
So that's one element that we have to kind of isolate here as well. But it's a good question for us to look at going forward is, again, balance sheet composition, do we have old assets in there, old receivables, or?
Yeah, we do.
fresh and new?
We need,
Are we turning them over?
yeah, we need to age them. We need to age those receivables. And also we look at the accounts payable, that's the other side of this equation. You got almost $500,000 change there in terms of payables. That's an area to look at where we do wire transfers or checks. That's an area of acute concern to make sure that, we're not double paying, overpaying. That could be devastating. If we are double checking that or triple checking that or
But I'm
reconciling that.
satisfied that it's very.
You're satisfied. It's
Yeah.
very much good controls there. That's a big concern for me. I don't know if y'all saw it, the paper this morning, it was $1 billion paid to dead people. How do we
yeah.
do that? How do we do that? I want to strangle some people.
Well, I can tell
Come
you.
here.
When they,
Sorry.
the money was going out to pay people for,
Yeah.
who weren't working during COVID,
Yeah,
their manager got money. I mean, he got sent, people that, let me put it this way. Somebody had stolen his name and social security number.
fraud. Okay, fraud, then we're the fraudster.
Fraud. yeah.
Okay, but my
That's how
goodness.
one way it happens.
Yeah, I'm a gas. I'm going to just not gonna deviate too long, Mr. Chairman. I'm a gas that
No,
1.6
you
billion
good.
too.
I'm eating cookies. I'm good.
I like to have one of those too. Wait, Mr. Chairman, I'm a gas that
You
day.
don't have to show it off.
Yeah, that's right.
Well-
I'm a gas that day. And
But they
I'm
remember
saying that
they were dead people,
dead people
but maybe they didn't notify somebody quickly enough.
quickly
You're
enough.
supposed
Okay,
to.
that's a lot of money to
No,
dead people though.
That would probably be
Come on.
some percentage.
That's a lot of
Yeah,
money.
no, there's fraud. It's fraud, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a mistake. It's,
Yeah,
that's a boast.
I'm a gas that, I tell you, I'm just shocked that that shouldn't happen in our world nowadays. All these computers and stuff, where's the reconciliation? What's going on? Okay, but anyway, back to the real world here, sorry, digressing. They $500,000, those are area of acute concern, and I just want to make sure we have double checked and triple checked, like you said, we got that 102,000, that's a pretty big hit of money, $100,000 there.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna go ahead and move the forward the financial statements to the full
Thank
commission
you, sir. Thank you.
with the recommendations of acceptance.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson, and may I have a second with that? Are you prepared? It's been moving properly. Second, additional discussion. I like that recommendation. All those in favor, sign of aye. Ayes have it. Thank you all for that, and I appreciate and agree wholeheartedly. It's time to move it forward. Yes.
I'll ask that to guys in.
So we typically produce the bear statements for the committee to review, and then, before the convention meeting, then we'll prepare a narrative, and I'm wondering if, just because of timing and closeout, maybe you can add some supplemental information into the narrative for the full commission.
Please.
We won't meet until September. There could be some
Yeah.
shifting of our
Yeah.
actual cash account balances between now and September. So maybe we could just include that in the narrative.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay,
And then
Yeah.
I guess this committee will see a July. They should see a July,
We're not scheduled until
the quarter.
the quarter,
So it'd be nice to
but-
be able to have some kind of a treasurer's report, maybe of.
for the August meeting, we can definitely have an update,
but all is good.
because we'll have a close of July.
Right.
Okay,
I just think because there's such a lag between this meeting and the September full commission meeting, it might be nice to get a fresh look of the treasurer's report at least.
I think that would be appropriate.
Just so
I
that
think that
folks
would be
know that
appropriate.
we don't have,
Yeah.
just $25,000.
Yeah, I agree with that. That might raise some ear, some concerns. I agree. I couldn't agree more with that, and I appreciate that. And also, footnotes. I think supplemental information on footnotes, least footnote as much as you like. I don't mind footnotes, 1, 2, 3, as many as you want. But explain, and I think a good discussion too, as Mr. Peterson suggested, on how we look at the different areas of operation and maybe some narrative around that. Might be helpful. I know you remember it way on, but that'd be nice, but yes. Martha, thank you. I appreciate that comment. All right, so where are we on the agenda now?
Item 4.
Item 4. Yeah, there we go. Item 4, thank you so much, yeah.
Yes, so I have,
Okay,
been working with Creative to put together the quote, and I'm expecting it literally at any moment to sign off on the quotation, in accordance with the budget that was approved for the furniture for this fiscal year. The plan is to outfit 4 offices, for staff, in the back of house. We brought furniture over, as you all know, from the old office. It's larger than is ideal for 4 of the offices, so we want to go ahead and make the replacement to match the new furniture system of the cubes. And then, the other part of the furniture investment budget that was approved for fiscal 2024 was to redo the furniture in the boardroom to make that space much more flexible and user friendly, for us to use different layouts that we envisioned for that room. So I'm waiting for that quote. We have an opportunity with, I think, the quality of furniture that we have, to post it for sale. And so I've been working with Mr. Gregory and gotten guidance from the state on disposition of publicly owned property. Dan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe all of the furniture that we own is fully depreciated. It's reached its final useful life from a financial perspective. But I do think that this furniture may hold value for a prospective buyer. So we would like to go through the process today of this committee approving a plan to dispose of the furniture that would include listing on Gov Deals, which is the kind of the clearinghouse for public entities to sell. And then anything that doesn't sell by our replacement date, we would go through other means to go the giveaway disposal route. So that's our plan, thinking that any revenue that we might realize from the sale of the furniture could go back into furniture investment. So I think I don't have a quantity list for you at this moment, because we're talking about ways that we might be able to just reassign some of the best furniture and then,
okay,
so we're thinking But in essence, the idea would be to clear the current boardroom as it's outfitted. Anything that's in that boardroom that would be of better use elsewhere in the office, we would do that kind of shuffle game. And then the 4 offices in the back of house for 4 of our staff members, we would list and sell those. And then we do have a decent quantity of the stand-up Vera desks that are tabletop.
Sure.
And so we would sell those as well, because they're not needed with the new movable tables.
Great. So it makes
It
sense.
has on here some motion, but I don't know that needs a motion. That's just a consensus.
Yeah, I think so too.
Eric's advice was just simply that we not go forward with this without consulting with the finance facilities and.
Well,
Let's do a motion.
Okay, we'll do a motion.
Move and properly second.
Sure.
All those in favor, action request for item 4. All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Yeah, go forth and make good decisions, as I know you will. In that regard, we trust you to do that well.
On it,
To
so,
do that well.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. And anything about future meetings schedule?
So we are
Martha, you'd like to
scheduled
share?
for August 22nd.
Okay,
And so we've got, I think, some new items to add to the agenda. And
Okay.
we were talking about the agenda yesterday.
Good.
So we'll have that. And then again, the next meeting after August is scheduled for 10/31.
it's
With
okay.
the target focus of that is to review the audit report that would then go to the full commission at the special meeting on,
Mhm.
I think it's November 2nd. So,
Okay, very good. Okay, that's great. And please keep me apprised, Dan, on the audit and the progress thereof. Make sure I don't have any snags in there.
I suspect you'll get contacted to do an interview.
Okay, yeah, I'm open to that. Please look forward to it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other items that need to come before this body, the finance committee, that you'd like to bring up? Yes, sir.
Well, I just want to say something to Mr. Davis.
Yes, Mr. Davis.
Mr. Davis, quit texting now, so I don't.
Your colleague is on you, Mr. Davis.
I was gonna call you a little bit later today, but since I've got you now.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I would like you to
This-
do the
you know,
invitation
the problem
tomorrow.
with this meeting is there's too many chairs in this meeting. That's the problem. Got a chair over there, got a
You
chair
got-
over
We
there.
got a lot of chairs, That's be great power, Mr. Turner. That's good power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, very good.
But
Thank you all.
I would appreciate you doing the invocation tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman, there's going to be an issue with me. I will certainly pray for the Hanover County Board of Supervisors, but I won't be on location tomorrow, sir.
I thought that was a fake place to see the sign behind you.
Yeah, and I probably should have told you before this meeting right here in front of everybody.
Where is he?
Okay.
He's on vacation, is that it?
Well, you're welcome to come to
Well,
Chesterfield.
wait a minute.
Yeah.
You told the chairman where you were. You didn't tell the rest of us.
Yeah, I am just off the coast of South Carolina near a town called Beaufort. A small island. I've been to this area before about 30 some years ago when I spent 3 months at a resort island off the coast of South Carolina.
Well, I understand that water's a lot better now than it used to be.
I don't know. 30 years ago, I just ran up and down the beach and got in the sand. They didn't let us get in the water.
All right, thank you. We appreciate it.
Okay.
All right, thank you all. This
You
meeting is here with adjourned. Thank you all. I think any other questions, appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for joining us today. We
Thanks for having me,
appreciate
sir.
that. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.